Jinnah delivers his very first speech in August 1947. The moment he ends this speech, the tape disappears. And I have met the cameraman who recorded this speech. There was only one there. All Muslim leaders of India stood behind Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and let him spearhead the movement for the rights of Muslims. So I've spoken to Abdul Hafiz Lakho, the lawyer of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who fought his case, the death penalty that year. And he was one of the last people to see Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. So that was the secular vision of Jinnah. So Zafrullah Khan had to be cancelled. And the one thing that could be used against him, he wasn't incompetent, everybody knew how competent he was his faith. To say, oh, he's a non-Muslim, he needs to go. Right? Because they thought that Zafrullah Khan was as if a foot in the door for the Ahmadiyya community, although the Ahmadiyya community had no political intentions. People have been booked, jailed for years, because on the wedding invitation of their daughter or son, they said dinner will be served at, say, 6 p.m. Inshallah. You need to be sent to jail.
Because of inshallah.
Because that's Muslim.
So why is it that the Pakistani government and Pakistan as a whole has such a big issue with Ahmadis?
Why is it important? Why do you think it's important to know that?
I think it's because I think a lot of people, Ahmadi youth, especially living in the West, born in the West, and Muslims in general as well, they see the persecution, they see the anti-Ahmadi laws. So you think, why has a Muslim country literally banned another Muslim group, and specifically this group?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very valid question to ask. And since you say that you ask, I take that as you're asking on behalf of the Ahmadi youth.
Of course.
And it might seem, why I ask that, why do you think it's important? It might seem as if it's something local, something regional, limited to a certain country, a certain part of the world. So why is it so important? Why is it important that the youth in the West would want to know about it? But the thing is that it's really important. It's a Muslim country. Maybe probably one of the only country created in the name of Islam. Right? And then for the Muslims of India. And Ahmadis were obviously British Indian Muslims. They were British Indian subjects in the time of the British Raj.
Yeah.
And the whole idea behind when, first obviously it was just an independence movement, asking for the British to go. Then there was a kind of a dichotomy, the British to go and also give a separate homeland to the Indian Muslims. Now Ahmadis were essentially Indian Muslims. They took part in the independence movement. They took part in what we now call the Pakistan movement.
So you're saying Ahmadis wanted an independent Pakistan for the Muslims and be part of that?
And be part of that. Obviously, it's something that evolved. But then it evolved, that demand for a separate homeland, it evolved over time, not only for Ahmadis, but for all Muslims in India. So they were very much a part of it. I mean, it's because, when the All India Muslim League came into being, which was the main body that was, spearheading this independence movement and this movement and this demand for a separate homeland. If you look into history, there's several general meetings, all India meetings of the All India Muslim League, presided by Ahmadis, presided by the likes of Sir Muhammad Zafrullah Khan, and members were Ahmadis were elected to be part of it by Muslims. So it was Muslims voting for Ahmadis to be a part of the Muslim League, the movement for Pakistan, in other words, if you like.
So Ahmadis were very integral with that movement to create Pakistan.
Absolutely. Let me just give you one example, which can, I think it'll make it easier for everyone to understand what the situation was like. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, known very fondly as Qaid-e-Azam, the great leader by Pakistanis. Now he was obviously the head of the All India Muslim League.
Yeah.
And we're looking at a time when the independence movement and the Pakistan movement was in full swing.
Yeah.
And a confidant of Ahmed Jinnah, he was on his way to somewhere, he was traveling. And he says, and he writes this in his book, The Nation That Lost Its Soul. He said, I was on my way to somewhere in maybe Amritsar. And Mr. Jinnah called to say that, could you please stop over in Qadian briefly and see Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community at that time, and request his prayers. Say my regards and request prayers for the All India Muslim League. Now he says that when I arrived, it was late at night and Mirza Sahib had retired. But when he found out that I had a message from Jinnah, he actually came down and he came and saw me in his office. And I conveyed the message and he said, tell Mr. Jinnah that as he knows, we've always been with Muslim League.
Yeah.
And we've always stood behind this demand for a separate homeland from. So that was the situation. And not only that, right from there, he said, I was also asked by Jinnah that another few miles is another village called Pathankot, where Abul Ala Maududi lives, a big scholar of the Indian Muslims. Convey him the same message. He said, the next morning, I went to Maududi and I said that this is the message from Jinnah. He says his regards and he says that, can you please pray for Pakistan movement?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, you want me to pray for a Na Pakistan? I mean, Pakistan means the land of the pure.
Yeah.
And Na Pakistan means land of the impure. So that is the type of a mindset that many of the Muslim scholars had, who now seem to own Pakistan
Yeah.
by every right. And that, what we've just seen is, the contrast. The head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim movement, Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, was very much part of it. So were the rest of the Ahmadis.
I think I got two questions from this, and this is, I think, a lot of Muslim youth living in the West don't know this. So it's very interesting. You say, so the Ahmadiyya Khalifa at the time and Jinnah.
Mm-hmm.
So Jinnah's asking for prayers.
Yes.
So there's clearly a deep connection here then between.
There is a very deep connection there. I get your question, and and I think it's important that we speak of that.
Yeah.
And to make it easier and to save time, the whole of the independence movement and its leaders would wait for the Daily Al Fazl, the newspaper of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, to wait and see whether Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad had said anything on the developing situation.
So his view was regarded.
His view was regarded, right? And was is an understatement.
Right.
Because let me tell you, it's going to make things easier. Because obviously we don't have time to go back into all of that. So anything that was happening, Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad Sahib, the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, his opinion was regarded and esteemed, highly esteemed. So much so, I wanted to see, I'd seen his remarks on the Simon Commission and on the Nehru Report, and all of this is like, obviously, the youth might not understand, but it's the developing situation of the Muslim India at that time, or India, British India. So I knew that there was a book on the Nehru Report, but I didn't know that he had himself got it translated in English.
Sorry, who had?
Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad. I came across in the catalogue of the Senate House Library here in the University of London. I was overjoyed. I wanted to have a look because I didn't know that he'd got it translated right back at that time, because the publication date was evident that it was from back then. So I looked at the catalogue, found the shelf mark, traced it down. I went there, it wasn't there. Now it's a reference library only. I go to the staff. I say, I'm looking for a book. It isn't there. They said, well, it might be because it's a reference library. They didn't expect it to be out. They said, we'll have a look. Maybe somebody's using it and then they bring it back. Another couple of days after that, I go back. It's still not there. So I get a little bit concerned. I go to the library staff and I raise my concern.
Yeah.
Then they go through their records and tell me, oh, it's such and such professor who teaches Commonwealth Studies. He's got it, and he's taken it to his class with special permission because they are these days working on the Nehru Report.
Interesting.
In that phase of the history. So that is that was the level, and that still is the level, and that is how history bears testimony to the type of connection, the how deeply rooted the Ahmadiyya Muslim community was all along when it came to a demand for a separate state, for a separate land for the Muslims of India.
Okay, great. So,
No.
just going a step forward then. So you're saying obviously the Ahmadiyya Khalifa and Muhammad Ali Jinnah and other people who are interested in the independence of Muslims and creating this Pakistan, they are listening to Al-Fazl, they want to read what the Ahmadiyya Khalifa is saying. Okay? So we then, so tell us, like, we go further now, and of course I do want to bring in the first foreign minister of Pakistan, Zafrullah Khan Sahab, and the other influences, Ahmadi influences on the creation of Pakistan and the support that Ahmadis gave. Because obviously we're heading towards when Pakistan disowned Ahmadis, right? But if we go further, so we know this is happening, what's the next steps now that happen?
Before we go to the next steps, let's go a few steps back, because that perspective is essential, that it's understood before we actually move on and answer and try and answer and try and understand what we're trying to look for today. Like I said, I mean, why was Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad Sahib's opinion so much valued? Of course, there was a background to it. So the Pakistan movement didn't only start in 1940 as it's usually thought, with the two-nation theory. It has obviously got, it stemmed from certain circumstances that had been in the making from the time when the British government decided to give Swaraj, or, the self-governance. So we go back to the early 1930s, 1931 to be more precise, July to be even more precise. The Kashmiri Muslims had lived for a very long time under the oppression of the Maharajas. So the Sikhs and the Hindus of Kashmir, which was predominantly a Muslim state, a princely state of India, but predominantly a Muslim state. But the Muslims were oppressed because of the ruling class, of the Dogras, of the Maharaja there. Now, I mean, so much had been going on. It had been brewing for a very long time. To the time when in 1931 something happened where about 70-something Muslims were killed for no reason, only for just maybe walking on the right side or doing something. But they were innocent. At that was the point when the Indian Muslims actually thought that, we need to do something for the Kashmiri Muslims. And the Muslim leaders of India came together and thought who could be the best person to spearhead this movement for the Kashmiris, to secure the rights of the Kashmiri Muslims. And the name they could think of, and the name that was presented by their stalwart, Sir Muhammad Iqbal, more commonly known as Allama Muhammad Iqbal, was Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad.
Oh, that's insane.
Right? They request him, could you please accept the presidentship of this committee, All India Kashmir Committee. He tells them, well, I'm a spiritual leader, I'm not a political leader. But they say, well, can you please do it? You're the only one who can do it. They'd seen something, right? What was that? We come to that in a second. So he accepts that role of being the president of the All India Kashmir.
Okay, so just if I just take a pause there, we have the Ahmadiyya Muslim Jamaat's Khalifa.
Yes.
Now leading all other Muslims in this committee formed to fight for the Kashmiri Muslims' rights.
Yes, absolutely. Right?
I think a lot of Muslim youth won't know that.
Won't know that. A lot, they won't, definitely. Yeah. Even I think their older generation might not know that. Right? So it's the Muslims asking for the rights of the Muslims to be secured. They couldn't be coming to a non-Muslim leader.
Exactly.
They couldn't ask a Muslim to do that.
That's interesting. So they saw him, of course, as a Muslim.
Of course.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's on an all-India level. That also must be remembered. It wasn't like on a provincial or on the level of a certain state or anything. It's an all-India level, right? So they come to him. Now, what happens right from the day that he assumes that office And it wasn't only Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad Sahib. He said the secretary elected for this purpose was Abdur Rahim Dard.
Right.
Another
Who?
Ahmadi.
Yeah.
Another Ahmadi scholar, the Imam of the London Mosque for a very long time. And, the first mosque in London was founded when he was here as the Imam of the London Mosque.
So he's a secretary as well.
He's the secretary as well, right? Right from day one, what happens is that Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad Sahib from Qadian, that little tiny village, calls the shots, and the whole of the India responds. He says, the Muslims, he says, we want to hold a Kashmir Day, All India Kashmir Day. And all of the India, Kashmir Day is celebrated, is commemorated in the whole of India, across India. You see, right all the way, not only in Punjab, not only in Delhi, or not only in Bombay or Goa or Calcutta, everywhere in Kerala and Bangalore and where not.
And the purpose was
the purpose was to raise awareness. He says we need funds because we've got no support. We've got no backing from the Kashmiri government, of course, and we've got no backing from the British government, of course. Right? So we need to have funds to be able to do something for our Kashmiri Muslim brothers.
And just to hit home the point again is, this is all for the Muslims living in Kashmir whose rights are being usurped.
Absolutely. Right? Now, with this, and when he asks for funds, funds pour in, not only from Ahmadis, but from other Muslims as well.
Right.
And that is where they're able to mobilize the whole of India. We don't have the time to go because we need to come back to your question, the actual issue. But what must be noted here is that all Muslims of India, all Muslim leaders of India stood behind Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, the head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and let him spearhead the movement for the rights of Muslims. So we must keep this backdrop in mind.
That's amazing. And I think a lot of people, this is going to be revelations for them. They've never heard this before. Okay, so we go forward. I just want to go forward now. So we've heard that clearly the Muslims of India, the leaders of India, were seeing him, the Ahmadiyya leadership, as a Muslim, part of the community. Now you have the Ahmadiyya leadership having the support of Jinnah asking him for prayers, and the Khalifa asking him what's his next comment on the creation of Pakistan. Pakistan is created in 1947. So tell us, so from there, if we go on from 1947.
Perfect. Now, why this Kashmir episode was important is because it's not like the Ahmadiyya community had not faced any persecution from Muslims. I mean, all along, even from the time of the founder,
Of course,
they'd gone, they'd traveled all across India, his opponents, and had taken all these fatwas and decrees saying that he's a non-Muslim and all that. So, but it was only up to a theological level. So they disagreed with his claims, they disagreed with his teachings. So it was all on theological basis and theological grounds, and it was confined to that.
Right.
Pretty much. This Kashmir episode, I say it, I mean, every historian, everyone has the right to put the marker wherever they like. I put the marker at that episode. That is when the Muslims realized the potential of leadership and the potential of being able to take the Muslims in any direction, mobilize them in any direction that they want. And that is when they first saw it as a threat, rather than seeing it as a potential.
So what as a threat?
So Ahmadiyya Muslim community as a threat.
Yeah.
Because that meant, it was at the same time that the Majlis-e-Ahrar Islam actually came into being, and they came head to head.
This was an anti-Ahmadi movement.
Anti-Ahmadi movement of the rest of the scholars and etc. So that is when they first realized. Now, Pakistan comes into being 1947, and Jinnah passes away just, in September 48. It's just a year after.
Oh, wow.
So he leaves his newly born baby, Pakistan, orphaned at a very young age, just, 12 months old, 13 months old. And everything just kind of gets derailed. Mm-hmm. Because those scholars, the likes of Maududi, who did not want Pakistan ever to come into being. So this must also be noted.
Yeah.
Non-Ahmadi scholars, Muslim scholars, ulama, did not want Pakistan to come into being.
They weren't
They were
supporting.
not supportive of it. Most of them, big names, right? The Congresses, as they're called, you know. And from them, Ataullah Shah Bukhari, Amir-e-Shariat, later on title in Pakistan, that Amir-e-Shariat was never in favor of Pakistan. He was one of those who called it Palidistan,
Which
an
means
impure, contaminated, filthy piece of land. He was one of them.
so. I think this is so important because
It is.
a lot of Pakistani Muslims, especially the youth, I come back to the youth because again, this is something which they don't know. They are Pakistani themselves,
Absolutely.
and they don't actually know that their scholars previously were against the creation of
Of
Pakistan.
And Jinnah, who today is revered as, you know, Rahmatullah alayh
Yeah,
and whatnot by these Muslim scholars, the so-called Muslim scholars, they called him Kafir-e-Azam, right?
which means
Which means the biggest infidel, the biggest non-Muslim around,
yeah.
right? Now, this person that they saw as Kafir-e-Azam, when he was able to win Pakistan over, he was able to establish a state, which isn't something ordinary, you know. It rarely ever happens in history, you know, getting that line drawn on the world map.
Yeah.
He gets that done. And these scholars who had called Pakistan na Pakistan, Jinnah they had called Kafir-e-Azam, they all decide to move in and settle.
Okay, so now they're supporting.
Now they're not supporting Pakistan. They've come into Pakistan. They want the reins of Pakistan. They want to hold it. They want to run it. Jinnah delivers his very first speech in August 1947. He says, Hindus are free to, you're free to go to your temples, you're free to go to your mosques, you're free to go to your synagogues, you're free to go to wherever you like. You can be from whatever faith or whatever creed. That has absolutely nothing to do with the state of Pakistan. The moment he ends this speech, the tape disappears. And I have met the cameraman who recorded this speech. There was only one there who recorded the speech and who was approached by one of the members of the bureaucracy of Jinnah, and the tape was taken from him, never to be found again, disappeared for 60 years. Why? Because these people who were around Jinnah, especially those who were influenced by these mullahs,
Scholars, yeah.
they did not agree with Jinnah's vision of a secular Pakistan. So that speech goes missing
What?
for 60 years, and that's on record, right?
So they literally censor that speech. His
They
first speech.
They literally just made that vanish somewhere into thin air.
It's insane.
It had to be recovered from where? From India, because they happen to have a copy, right? So, khair, coming back to the issue. So, Jinnah's vision of Pakistan was not wanted by these scholars, these Maulvis, and they wanted to run Pakistan. And that is where the issue comes in. They've seen the political acumen of Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad. They've seen his leadership prowess, and they know what it can mean, although the Ahmadiyya community never had any political motives.
Yeah.
Never
But
claimed any motive.
they've seen the strength
They've seen
that the Ahmadiyya Khilafat can create within the Muslim Ummah
absolutely.
itself.
Absolutely. And then they've seen what kind of contribution Ahmadiyya Muslim community has made for Pakistan. And they know that people see it.
Right.
So all of that has to be cancelled. You know, this cancel culture isn't new. It's been around in its own different forms in every time, every age. Zafrullah Khan, a stalwart, a founding father of Pakistan, has to be cancelled. What do? He's competent, he's clever, he's intelligent. Zafrullah Khan, Razilullah Ta'ala Anhu, was one of, was an Ahmadi, first of all, right? And then he was, he got the opportunity to work in various capacities in the time of the British Raj. And
he was a lawyer by
he was a lawyer by profession, and he was a member of the executive council, a privy council of the Viceroy of India, the executive council, which isn't something ordinary. So he was there, right? Known for his honesty, known for his intelligence, known for his intellectual caliber, known for his vision. He was somebody of extraordinary qualities, and he was part of the British bureaucratic system. I mean, in the civil service, he joined the civil service, and he moved up the ladder quite swiftly.
Mhm.
So
And he was part of the
the executive, he
Yeah.
became part of the executive council of the viceroy,
right.
right, which isn't an ordinary thing. So you have Zafrullah Khan, who is honest, intelligent, whose intellectual caliber is known to everyone,
Yeah.
and who has great potential to be anything,
Yeah.
the topmost position that you could think of in Pakistan, right? He was much more competent than anyone else to actually be there, right? Now, so you have that. You have other Ahmadis who have made huge contributions. You have, first of all, you have Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad, the head of the Ahmadiyya community, whose political acumen is known, very well known to
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
And they've known how he is fully able to mobilize the Muslims of India,
Yeah.
and how he could do that if he had wanted to do that in Pakistan. Now, that is where
Yeah.
the problem comes in.
Okay, so just to confirm, Jinnah chooses Sir Zafrullah Khan,
Yes, he chooses
Yeah.
Zafrullah Khan to be the first foreign minister.
Foreign
of
Minister of
Pakistan.
Pakistan. Yeah.
The first law minister is Jugandarnath Mandal, a Hindu, right? So
Okay.
Jinnah's vision was of a
Right.
secular Pakistan, right? And despite pressure, I mean, he was told that why don't you
Yeah.
remove Ahmadis from key posts like
Right.
Zafrullah Khan? He said, why? And they say, well, because he isn't a Muslim. He said, who am I to decide on somebody's faith? And who am I to, decide whether someone, because of his religion, should serve in a position or not? So that was the secular vision of Jinnah. So Zafrullah Khan had to be cancelled. And the one thing that could be used against him, he wasn't incompetent.
Yeah.
Everybody knew
Yeah.
how competent he was his faith. To say, oh, he's a non-Muslim. He needs to go. Right? Because they thought that Zafrullah Khan was as if a foot in the door
Yeah.
for the Ahmadiyya community, although the Ahmadiyya community had no political intentions.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay, so if we've got Zafrullah Khan as the foreign minister, we've seen the influence of the Ahmadiyya Khilafat as well, our second Khalifa. So we go 1947, you said 48, Jinnah passes away. The ulama are put pressure on him. They got rid of basically the recording of Jinnah saying that you're free to go to your temples, your mosques, wherever you want. They don't want this, but they want a theocracy.
They do. And
Okay.
why do they want that? That also must be understood.
Yeah.
Because it's these people who had been using extremely abusive and filthy language against Pakistan and the founder of Pakistan,
Right. The ulama.
the ulama.
Yeah.
They wanted to have a new identity. They wanted to prove their Muslimness.
Yeah.
Hence this, because I've spoken to many historians, I've spoken to many people who lived through that phase of the independence movement. And they said we never heard this slogan, Pakistan ka matlab kya, la ilaha illallah. I've spoken to Raza Ali Abdi. It's right there out there, even on the internet. You can still search Asif Basit and Raza Ali Abdi and you'll get to it. They said, we never heard this.
Okay, can you just translate that? What you just said?
But the slogan is Pakistan ka matlab kya? What does Pakistan stand for? La ilaha illallah. There's none worthy of worship except Allah. Although, as Muslims, as Ahmadis, I mean, who doesn't believe in that? But it wasn't part of Jinnah's politics.
Yeah, it was never meant to be a theocracy.
It wasn't. Jinnah's motto, the three guiding principles were Ittihad, Tanzeem, Iman. Always translated, because Jinnah obviously always spoke in English most of the time, was Ittihad, unity,
Yeah.
Tanzeem, discipline, faith, Yaqeen. Yaqeen was, right? So that faith was always translated as Yaqeen, which means,
right.
which means conviction.
Right.
With time, that was changed into Iman,
Meaning faith, religion.
religion, when that was nowhere on the picture, nowhere on the map at all. I'm not questioning anybody's faith here at all, not Jinnah's, not anyone else's.
Yeah.
But this is how things have changed. This is how history has been twisted and tweaked over time. So it's that Muslimness that the ulama or the Maulvis are having to prove so that they can take ownership of that country. And that is where the build-up of that pressure comes in, right? So
So if we just go from, okay, great. So we know exactly what the ulama are trying. So Jinnah passes away in 1948. Now we know up to 1974, for especially Ahmadis, the main issue starts. But so if what happens in between, so 1948, Ahmadis clearly have a massive role in the creation of Pakistan, like you're saying. Jinnah's now passed away. What do we see now?
Jinnah is out of the way, passed away naturally. Although there are conspiracy theories around that, but
oh, really?
I'm not going into that. Yeah. Jinnah passes away, so Jinnah is out of the way for these ulama. Right?
Yeah.
Now they want to get rid of anything to do with Jinnah. Any person, any ideology, anything. So the next target is another founding father, which is Sir Muhammad Zafrullah Khan.
Yeah.
They want him gone. Why? Because he's not a Muslim.
According to them.
According to them. They say, well, he's an Ahmadi, he's not a Muslim, he needs to go. That is where they actually, that is what they used as a pivot for that movement that they launched against the Ahmadis, which turned into what is known as the anti-Ahmadiyya agitation of 1953. Again, a very important episode of history. So that pressure builds and builds. First of all, it's kind of confined to government circles, writing to the government, protests taking place here and there, little ones.
Against Zafrullah Khan.
Against Zafrullah Khan and the Ahmadis. And Zafrullah Khan and any other Ahmadi on any key post should be removed because not because they had to give a reason.
Right.
Because anyone would ask, such a competent person, look what he's done. He's fought the case of Kashmir so competently well. He's
the Palestine issue in UN.
Tunisia, Libya, they're all obliged to Zafrullah Khan, the whole of the Muslim world, for their independence and for their cases to be presented in the United Nations. Right? So there had to be a reason. Nobody could say he wasn't competent. He was very competent.
Yeah.
So the reason that they could think of, and the reason that they thought we can lead us to people's hearts, was that, he's not Muslim.
Yeah.
If only he was Muslim.
Yeah.
Right? So since he's not a Muslim, has to go. So that is where it all started. And then by 1953, it had turned, they had taken this demand to the streets. And there were wild protests going on.
Wow.
And there were riots going on. Ahmadi houses were looted. Businesses were looted. People were killed. People were displaced in 1953. Ahmadis.
This is insane because Ahmadis were the founding fathers of Pakistan.
Of course, and apart from that, there was so much contribution that they already made. Now, with that, the government had to step in, or the military rather had to step in. And I would say, like I said, any historian can put a marker wherever they like for anything, because obviously you can't always put a finger and say, this is where this starts, not always. I would say that this draconian tradition of martial laws in Pakistan starts with the anti-Ahmadi agitation.
Interesting.
And I don't just say that out of my own, my own thought only, or my opinion. It's backed by Qasim Zaman, professor of Princeton University, in his book Ulama in Contemporary Islam, Custodians of Faith, Qasim Zaman. And he says that all of these militant organizations of Pakistan that have brought disrepute for Pakistan, if you trace their roots, you'll find them in the anti-Ahmadiyya agitation of 1953. That is where they all originated.
That's really interesting.
So the worst thing that has happened to Pakistan by these ulama has its root in their wild opposition of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Very unfortunate, but very true.
Right. So let's go from now 1953. So there's this agitation, like you're saying, Ahmadis are being looted, persecuted, people are on the streets.
Right.
What happens then?
Right. So martial law is imposed just to...
Okay, so there's martial law.
There's martial law imposed just to bring the inflammatory situation down. And then a special inquiry commission is formed.
Okay.
By the Lahore High Court, under the Lahore High Court, Justice Munir heading it, and Justice Amar Kayani with him. And the idea of this commission, which is famously known as the Munir Inquiry Commission, is to actually give a chance to these anti-Ahmadiyya forces,
The scholars mainly.
the scholars so-called, the mullahs, to voice their demand in a civil way. Rather than doing it on the street, do it in a civil way.
Right.
Just tell us what's the problem, what do you want, right? So they go before the commission and they're asked, what is the problem? And they say, well, we want Zafrullah Khan gone. Why? Because he's not a Muslim. And then obviously the judges ask them that, all right, okay, so how do you define a Muslim? So that we can determine whether Zafrullah Khan is a Muslim or not and should be removed on this basis only.
Yeah.
How do you define a Muslim?
Because naturally you need a definition for you to say that something isn't that definition.
Yes. So, because you can't just say, I can't just keep telling you that this is not a pen.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have to tell you what this is.
What? Yeah.
Or I have to tell you what a pen
Well,
is.
you have to tell me
be
what a
able
pen
to
is,
tell
yeah.
you that this is not a pen. So I'll have to define that, right? Now, they ask them, they send them out to come back with the definition of a Muslim, so that the court could think how to move on with it and how to proceed.
So Muslim scholars are now asked, what is the definition of a Muslim
Yes.
for you to declare Zafrullah Khan a non-Muslim anyway?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Days and days of deliberation, weeks of deliberation, and the court notes and records and publishes it afterwards. The words of Munir, Justice Munir and Justice Erakani, that they could know, all these scholars who were, who came with these demands against the Ahmadis,
Yeah.
could not come up with a single agreed definition of a Muslim.
Wow.
Hence, their case was dismissed
The case was dismissed.
because they didn't have any. There was no footing, there was no standing, there was absolutely no reasonable grounds.
So we have.
And we're talking of a time when the Pakistan's judiciary lived by certain standards, very good standards.
Yeah.
I mean, Tariq Ali, one of the most famous political analysts, he says that I see this, the Munir Inquiry report, which is published. He says that published in June 1954, following year. He says that I see it as a masterpiece of its own kind in the history of the Pakistan judiciary, and it should be taught, it should be included in the curriculum of Pakistan if somebody is studying the history or the political history of Pakistan.
Well, yeah, I mean, it sounds like a crucial moment
It is.
anyway, because if you're having so much unrest
Mm-hmm.
in the world in Pakistan, and it's mainly to do with one community, the Ahmadi Muslim community, then the reason has to be legitimate, right? So if the Munir Inquiry report is now saying that actually these ulama who are causing so much unrest can't even come up with a definition, then that's a problem. And it's interesting. So they dismiss the case.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So, that goes on, right? So that happens.
Yeah.
Fast forward another 20 years, because after this, because when they saw that the law isn't on their side, they did what they could.
Right.
The demands never stopped. Ahmadis, on the other hand, they kept contributing whatever they could for the cause of the advancement, the betterment of Pakistan.
Can we have some examples of that? We have.
If we just look at the number, the people, the persons, the individuals from the Ahmadiyya Muslim community who can be seen as stalwarts of Pakistan. Dr. Abdul Salam, the first Muslim scientist to win a Nobel Prize, was an Ahmadi and a Pakistani Ahmadi, disowned by Pakistan for the mere reason that he was an Ahmadi. At a time when Pakistan was rapidly gaining disrepute and a bad name in the whole of the world. They disowned him. I mean, he could make a difference,
Yeah, I mean, even on his gravestone,
Or even on his grave.
they've rubbed out Muslim
Absolutely.
from that.
So, and the first ever Pakistani to have received any Nobel Prize, Dr.
Yeah.
Abdul Salam,
Yeah.
disowned. M.M. Ahmed, such a great economist of a scale, of a class where, the likes of all of the economists of Pakistan, the great economists of Pakistan, like Sartaj Aziz, like Shahid Barki, like Moin Quraishi, who later became the interim Prime Minister of Pakistan. They all take the pride in being the protege of M.M. Ahmed.
And M.M. Ahmed was who
And
then?
M.M. Ahmed was an Ahmadi and a grandson of the founder of the Ahmadi Muslim community. So
And sorry, so what was his role in the
he
government?
was an economist, and he was an economic advisor for in the time of Ayub Khan.
Yeah.
And he had, Ayub Khan actually once said that the Pakistani nation, I think it was a dam that he had constructed, and Ayub Khan said that we'll remain indebted. Not he'd constructed, he's been instrumental in
Yeah.
the whole of the planning and everything, the economic planning. And he said the whole of the Pakistani nation will remain indebted to M.M. Ahmed. So he was an economist of that class, and his services were of that kind of
Right.
a level.
And we'd had a lot of Pakistani, Ahmadis in the military at very high posts as well,
Those-
right?
Absolutely. They served there and very loyally
Yeah.
gave their lives, laid their lives for Pakistan. But yeah, I don't know why. It's this, the mullahs, they never actually really got to see them as loyal, and all of that persecution that goes on. But anyway, so from 53, they knew the law is not on our side. We have to do something. 20 years, and by that time, Pakistan has deteriorated.
Right.
The decadence is unprecedented. So it's all of these martial laws and
Yeah.
military rulers and all of that coming, and all of that turbulence that Pakistan has gone through.
Right.
And finally, they get an elected leader, so Zade Bhutto.
Okay.
But then, the way the dynamics of the country are going, the army doesn't want to, always have. They don't really want a elected leader to settle, and they do not. Even the Muslim scholars don't want somebody like Bhutto, who had a very secular outlook.
Yeah.
So Bhutto is on a very shaky pedestal, and Muslim scholars want to take advantage of that. These ulama, right? But when you say scholars, scholars is a very
So cool, yeah.
It's a very dignified kind of a term. So these mullahs, who called themselves scholars, they wouldn't accept that. So Bhutto was on a shaky platform.
So the so-called scholars here are pushing Bhutto to create something in law that's going to go against the Ahmadis. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So I've spoken to Abdul Hafiz Lakho, the lawyer of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who fought his case, the death penalty that year. And he was one of the last people to see Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. And that's on record as well. And you can easily search Abdul Hafiz Lakho on MTA, if you like, or something like that in YouTube, and you'll get to that.
Yeah, we can add that to the show note caption as well. Yeah.
And he said, when I asked him, I said, what happened to Bhutto? Why was he doing that? And he said, well, I can tell you that because he was very close to Bhutto. He said,
Sorry, doing what? Doing what?
Of taking the Ahmadiyya case to
Yeah.
the National Assembly,
Okay.
whether they're Muslim or not, and
Okay.
whether the law should declare them, the constitution should declare them non-Muslim or not.
Okay, so Bhutto is now taking this to the constitution, basically to put it into constitution.
Under the pressure of the Maulvis, because he thought the Maulvis might save my throne.
Right, okay.
Right? So Bhutto ends up taking the Ahmadiyya case to the National Assembly of Pakistan, to the Parliament of Pakistan.
Yeah.
And then a whole, a full house in camera proceeding takes place, where these scholars are given the chance to voice their demand.
Okay, and this proceeding is 1974.
1974.
Okay.
The Ahmadiyya delegation is given their chance to express their views.
Okay, sorry. What is this whole this meeting about?
It's about seeing whether Ahmadis are Muslim or not, and whether by law they should be declared non-Muslim or not.
Okay, so the scholars now, the so-called scholars, have become successful in pressuring Bhutto, the secular leader who needs votes, to have this debate now, which they had problems before.
Yeah,
That look, we need to declare Ahmadis as non-Muslims.
absolutely.
Okay, but my question is, why is this still happening? It's 20 years, right? 1954. Why have they still got an issue?
Well, because
Are Ahmadis that much of an issue?
the Ahmadis, let me tell you,
Yeah.
early days of Pakistan, the Ahmadiyya identity was that if somebody was honest,
Yeah.
if somebody was law-abiding, if somebody was highly educated, and if somebody was very competent, people would say, oh, it looks like he's a Qadiani Ahmadi. That was right
In Pakistan.
in Pakistan. Rabwa, the Ahmadiyya town, remained the most the town with the highest level of literacy in the whole of Pakistan for years over years.
Wow.
Men and women both. A small, tiny town. So that was. And then when it comes to the Islamic side of things, because it's not all political, because this political, all of these goings on were just a symptom of the underlying actual issue.
Yeah.
The actual issue was that the Ahmadiyya theology had started attracting so many Muslims into the fold of Ahmadiyya. And the Ahmadiyya mission had started spreading. And they had seen it spread from a tiny town of Qadian to the cities like London, the huge metropolis of London, New York, other parts of the world, to Japan, in Russia, here and there, everywhere, in every part of the world. That has to be stopped. Because this means that the Qadianis, as they call them, they're going to take over. And we need to stop this. And how do we stop this? They didn't seem to find a way. The only way was, like I said, cancel culture existed then just as much as it exists today. It's just changed its garments and its garbs. So they had to be cancelled, and the reason that they could find or that they could make up was that they're non-Muslims, they pretend to be Muslims, they don't believe in the finality of prophethood, they believe in some random person to be another prophet after the Prophet Muhammad. They don't believe in this, they don't believe in that. Right? And their founder claims to be to have a greater status than the Holy Prophet ﷺ and whatnot.
Yeah. These are all the claims.
These all were claims, and that is where they got the public interest towards, and that is where they were able to mobilize the public against the Ahmadis. And that is what they took to the National Assembly, to the Parliament. And the Parliament ended up deciding, despite listening to clear denials by the Ahmadiyya delegation, that we believe in the Holy Prophet ﷺ to be the final prophet.
Yeah.
And we believe that Islam is the final religion. But we believe in Mirza Sahib to be the promised Messiah and Mahdi, just as you believe that there is going to be a Messiah and a Mahdi.
Yeah.
So there's absolutely nothing there's no question of breaching the concept of finality of prophethood. But despite that, they were declared on the 7th of September 1974. Ahmadis in Pakistan were declared non-Muslim.
Yeah.
And that is where the very sad state of things began.
Okay, so just in this night, the proceedings of 1974, I've read parts of it, and it's been published, written. So the proceedings of 1974, this is a debate, literal debate, between our third caliph, and there's a whole delegation, and the ulama of the time, and there's lawyers, everyone involved. We defend, right? And we also show that the accusations that they're making in terms of their understanding of, they're strawmanning our arguments and our beliefs. The debate happens, but they declare us as non-Muslim. And now this is written into the Constitution of Pakistan.
It is.
Why?
It's written in the Constitution of Pakistan. The Constitution that was made, that actually, it took many, many years for it to actually to come into being, the Constitution. So it just came out in 1973. And this amendment happens in 1974, where it says that the Ahmadiyya community is declared out of the pale of Islam.
Okay, so why? Why just the Ahmadiyya community?
One single community. Well, Fatir, I think this why should be asked to the Pakistani government maybe. But let me tell you something else which might help in addressing and understanding this why. While this proceeding was happening
in 1974
against the Ahmadis, all Muslim sects together to declare Ahmadis out of the pale of Islam, non-Muslim. Whenever the break for Salat, for prayer, happened, in the main hall where there was meant to be a congregation and where they could pray, there was not one single congregation, where all of these Muslim sects could pray behind each other. You had small little congregations happening because the Barelvis wouldn't pray behind the Deobandis, and then certain Barelvis wouldn't even pray behind certain Barelvis, and certain Deobandis wouldn't pray behind a certain Deobandi. And they both wouldn't pray behind the Shia, and the Shia wouldn't pray behind them. So you had tiny little fractions or factions doing their own congregation. Why? Because their elders had left clear-cut decrees against each other, saying they're out of the pale of Islam. The Bandis had left decrees, fatwas, that Barelvis are out of it.
Yeah.
Barelvis said the Bandis were. The Bandis said the Salafis were out of Islam. Salafis said the Deobandis and Barelvis both were out of the pale of Islam. Right? They all agreed that Shias weren't Muslim enough. Shias thought these are not Muslim enough. All of that had happened on record.
Yeah. This
Right?
is insane. This is insane. Yeah.
All of these people who thought that none of them was a Muslim were now there. Oh, the irony.
Yeah, exactly.
Were now there asking for the Ahmadis to be declared non-Muslim.
It's so hypocritical. It's
So it's not me saying it. It's their fatwas telling you that it was a bunch of non-Muslims asking for one community from Islam, unanimously agreeing on this thing, that please declare them out of the pale of Islam. Because all of these sects knew that the Ahmadiyya theology made more sense than their theology. And they knew that they had discrepancies in what they believe in. Finality of prophethood, they believed the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the last prophet. That was the biggest issue in the 1974 and any other debates that happened. Well, okay, if he's the last prophet, then who are you waiting for in the form of Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
That means somebody is coming. So there is a discrepancy. And the youth could very easily see those holes.
And I think this is interesting because I'm sure at that time then, because obviously I wasn't, when we didn't grow up there, so we don't know exactly what was happening there, but you've lived there, you've gone through university there and everything. I'm sure that these discussions were happening on the streets, day to day, at university, in schools, in workplaces, where Ahmadis are doing tabligh and dawah. They're telling people about the Ahmadi theology.
Yep.
And for them to then say, no, we have to stop this one community.
Yes.
Clearly there was something happening
Absolutely.
that was affecting their youth.
Absolutely.
There.
Because Ahmadis to this day
Yeah.
remain the only one single sect, because they call themselves Muslims,
Yeah, they do.
right? To be declared by name in the constitution of Pakistan as non-Ahmadis. Who does that?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Exactly.
That's draconian.
Yeah.
That's just silly, to say the least.
And especially when there's fatwa of kufr, edicts of kufr on each other. Why are you picking out this one
Just
community?
one community.
There's
right?
clearly an issue.
There's clearly an issue.
Which
Like I
you're
said,
scared of.
They all knew that their theology had been identified by the Muslim youth as having discrepancies, as having holes, big ones, massive ones.
And Ahmadi theology made sense.
And Ahmadi theology definitely would make sense to them, right? Because at the one hand, like I said, you said there's not going to be no prophet after the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Then you're waiting for a Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And then the Ahmadis come in and say, the Holy Prophet is the last prophet. No other prophet can come.
Yeah.
But it will have to be someone from within the Ummah of the Holy Prophet, because that would be derogatory. That the teachings of Prophet Muhammad could not save Islam, hence another prophet had to be sent to help. So it has to be.
And I could also imagine how Ahmadis then would end the discussions where actually Isa has died according to the Quran.
Of course.
So this will be like another
Absolutely.
panic moment for their ulama.
Absolutely.
If we go forward then, so we got this 74. 84 we know
Right.
another event happens.
84, again another event happens. This is now another. So the Bhutto saga ends.
Yeah, right.
Bhutto is hanged.
Yeah.
Zia takes over. Another dark age of Pakistan starts with General Ziaul Haq. He too is there to prove himself Muslim enough, because people, after a democratic leader, elected leader, is hanged, they don't want a military leader to come and rule the country. Now, this military leader has to prove how Muslim he is.
Yeah, exactly.
And no one more than him can be sympathetic to a Muslim state. And we'll talk about this some other time maybe, because we can't go into detail. Now, this has to be reiterated by Zia. And again,
What has to reiterate?
that he is Muslim enough and that Ahmadis are not Muslims.
Okay.
And by taking steps against this one single community, the scapegoat,
Yeah.
he knew that he'll be able to prove to the Pakistanis how Muslim he is and how much a well-wisher of Islam he is. And then again, we see that the Ahmadiyya issue is brought into question.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
sorry, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say, so what did Ziaul Haq actually do?
Ziaul Haq comes up with with an ordinance called the Ordinance 20, issued in 1984, where Ahmadis are not allowed to say the azan, where Ahmadis are not allowed to worship in the Islamic mode of worship, or by Islamic way of worship, namaz, salat. They cannot say anything which is seen as Islamic terminology. For example, and this again, all of this is on record. People have been booked, jailed for years, because on the wedding invitation of their daughter or son, they said dinner will be served at, say, 6 p.m. Inshallah.
Yeah.
You need to be sent to jail.
Because of inshallah.
Because that's Muslim. And somebody on the letter, the start of their letter with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Yeah.
And the letter is censored somewhere, or it's seen, or they're seen writing that, and they're booked. They're taken to sent to jail.
That's insane. So, and I could imagine then, obviously, the literature,
Of course.
Ahmadi books,
Yes.
they're banned as well.
They're banned as well. And, even appearing like a Muslim. So, if I'm in Pakistan, even simply having a beard could actually mean I'm trying to appear like a Muslim.
So wait, let me get this straight.
A Muslim name would mean you're trying to appear like a Muslim, or you're giving a Muslim identity to your child, right? So
Ahmadis. Wait, let me get this straight. Ahmadis are not allowed to. They're not allowed to look like Muslims. They're not allowed to use Muslim terminologies. They can't say Assalamu alaikum. Muslim names, even writing Arabic like Inshallah, right? Muslim terminologies, Bismillah. They have been. And to this day, these laws are in place.
Absolutely.
They've been put into jail for this.
They have been. They still are. Many of them still are. Scores of them still are. Some of them don't even know what they've been charged for.
Yeah.
Some of them don't even know what's going to happen to them.
And I guess that's not that's just the laws, right? We know, and this is all out in the news, and I think a lot of the Muslim youth are aware that, of course, Ahmadis are literally killed.
Even today, yes, absolutely.
They're killed.
Yeah, they're killed
Yeah.
because of that, because of their faith.
Yeah.
Mercilessly killed, just because they were Ahmadis, because they decided to have a certain understanding of Islam.
Yeah.
Because even apostasy doesn't call for death penalty.
Exactly.
This wasn't even, it was just a certain understanding of the Islamic teachings.
Yeah.
So that is completely inhumane.
Right. So this is insane. Of course, we want Muslim youth to go and study this and see how these draconian laws, anti-Ahmadi laws, are not Islamic at all. Some final thoughts in these laws, what Ahmadiyya is going through now, and what the future is going to be. Because
what Ahmadiyya is going through now in Pakistan
is
a very sad story. Like I said, scores of them, as we speak, sit in jails, not knowing what the future holds for them. They're deprived of basic amenities. They're deprived of, opportunities of education, of employment. It's such their life is in danger all the time.
Even if they have to get a passport, they have to.
Even if they get a passport, they have to declare. You have, if you say you're a Muslim, you have to do this and that. So every document in Pakistani government setup wants to know whether you're a Qadiani or not, or an Ahmadi or not. Why? That's the question. And that is what the youth actually should think about. How much do you want to do to a community? And why have you not been able to contain it? Because all of this was being done to contain them. Or they're all over the place now. You tried to contain them into Rabwa alone or even into jails. They're in every single country of the world,
Yeah.
right? And where they're able to practice their religion, they're able to preach. Many people joining the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. So that is Pakistan. What is happening here in the West? Just one little thing, and I would rest my case on that.
Yeah.
Why would Muslim communities, even here in the United Kingdom, spend hours and hours and hours on the internet trying to prove that the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is wrong, is out of the pale of Islam, and people should not listen to them? Does anyone do that?
Yeah.
I mean, these Muslims, who should be, who think that Ahmadis are not Muslims, what they should be doing so much, people are leaving Islam. People are leaving religion altogether. But that doesn't, Muslim youth leaving religion altogether is not a threat to them.
Yeah.
But that a Muslim youth becomes an Ahmadi or believes or understands or agrees with the Ahmadi understanding of Islam is simply unacceptable.
Yeah.
I don't think anything needs to be said after that.
Yeah, exactly. I think the audience, the viewers, the listeners can decide for themselves. And of course, we as this platform on Al-Hakam, we want our Muslim youth to go out and study, ask questions, go to your scholars, go to your parents. Why is it that this one community, they're the ones who've been picked on
Absolutely.
in the constitution of Pakistan, that we have to contain this one community? Of course, there's more to the story. And I think a lot of the story has been quite detail today, been exposed for the Muslims to learn from, especially the youth. And we encourage them to continue this, study themselves. We're going to have so many more episodes as well, showing them the reality as well. But anyways, thank you, Asif Batasab, for coming on and telling us the reality of why Ahmadis are so censored in Pakistan.
Thank you very much. Jazakumullah.